Okay, so this is not your fault, this is my technical fault. Okay, so dear colleagues, thanks so much for the opportunity being here via Zoom. To my unspeakable sorrow, I have got some medicinal problems and doctor didn't permit me to travel due to my health problems. And my main topic is the Hungarian case, extremism as a cradle of the evolution of authoritarianism. What does it mean? That I'm examining the historical roots of the recent situation, because it's well known that Hungarian political regime does thus performs a very extreme political situation, a very extreme political regime. And my question is that do we have some roots? Do we have some peculiarities in the Hungarian social and historical traditions? And okay, and that's why the methodological background is the last publication, and generally my methodological background is the finding of Professor Agnes Heller, who was a professor of the Johns Hopkins University of Washington, and especially her last publication under the title How Liberty Can Be Lost gave me much methodological contribution, because Professor Heller investigated the roots of the recent Hungarian situation, and she investigated as a philosopher. Actually, I'm graduated from philosophy too, and beyond my great respect to Agnes Heller, I can use her philosophical approach, because Agnes Heller borrowed much from Hannah Arendt as for the distinction of the liberation and liberty. Thus, the freedom doesn't come after the liberation. So the liberation doesn't give automatically the freedom. And the freedom, and this is the approach of Hannah Arendt, and Agnes Heller applied to the Hungarian situation. And that's why I have completed a paper about about a brief overview of the 20th century Hungarian political regimes as for the extremism. For Agnes Heller investigated the roots of the recent Orbán regime. Within the framework of this presentation, I don't introduce you the recent Orbán regime because the whole world knows what happened in Hungary. And Heller came to the conclusion, at least Heller's point of view is that Hungarians gave the liberty for free. So I remember when I was young, and there were huge demonstrations at the main square of Prague, of capital of Czech Republic, against the Czech communist regime. That is the great main square in Prague, where is the National Theatre in Prague. And at that time, I visited the Baltic states, and I participated as a guest in a huge demonstration in Latvia, in the capital of Riga. Very actually, I didn't want, but I put to that crowd. So Agnes Heller stated out that Hungarians gained the regime change without great struggles, because the opposition to the communist regime set around a so-called round table, and does the political elite stated out what to do. Thus the Hungarian society was not trained to gain the freedom after the liberty, to gain the to liberation, to gain to establish institution, and for the development of the political culture. And this is the key point, the political culture. And that's why I want to give an brief overview of the political culture of Hungarian regimes in the last century. So Hungary underwent several totalitarian, xenophobic, and then illiberal regimes, because the latest liberal democracy, and I can say that the last liberal democracy functioned in Hungary at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries in Austro-Hungary, when capital Budapest developed, urban culture developed, and urban culture is always a key point for the development for the open society. The urban development is the aim of the open society. Actually, lately, the authoritarian leader Orbán limited the financial sources of capital Budapest, and he developed another city in Hungary, Debrecen, to make it a new capital of Hungary. So a century earlier, in Austro-Hungary, Budapest became a metropolis in Europe equal with Vienna, not equal with Paris, but equal with Vienna. And in Austro-Hungary, the urban development was investigated by a lot of authors, and I can highlight Catherine Horrell, a professor in Paris, who completed a book about the urban, the multiculturalism in Austro-Hungary, and Catherine Horrell devoted a whole chapter to the urban society. I hope you can see my slide in the screen with Catherine Horrell's, and some illustration for the urban development for the metropolis of Budapest, the secession and Art Nouveau. That's great buildings and great development at the turn of century. And what does it mean? This culture thus urged the development of the open society too. And a simple example that that times Hungarian society was very open for the neighbor, so no xenophobia. And that's why the Ukrainian writer Ivan Franko published the history of the Ukrainian literature in Hungarian translation for an invitation of Professor Asbolt Oskar, the professor of the Budapest University. And then in the culmination of the First World War, a company of Hungarian historians and literary interpreters led by Hyador Stripsky published a so-called journal under the title Ukrainia. It is the Latinized title Ukraine. Thus, this is the case study for the openness for the neighbors. And then also Hungary. Yes. Minutes. Have I 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Okay. After the collapse of Austro-Hungary, the extremists appeared in the White Terror, in the Horthy regime, in the Prónai and Héjas detachment, and then in the numerus clausus under the Minister of Culture Kuno Klebersberg, who established the thesis about the supremacy of Hungarians over the neighboring countries. So it was not only an anti-Semitic doctrine, but a doctrine of supremacy of Hungarians. So the right-wing extremism appeared in the Horthy regime, and the Slavic departments were closed, as Professor Bonkalo was sacked from the Budapest University in the Horthy regime. And then the left-wing extremism was very ambiguous, double-sided, because during the 15th and 16th, prominent poets and writers were subjected under repression, but they translated, for instance, the Soviet literatures under the umbrella of Soviet literatures, and they translated Lithuanian, Estonian, Ukrainian, and Kazakh literatures very excellently. So the socialist system was very ambiguous but double-sided, and there was always two sides to a coin. And lately I am finishing that based on the strong tradition of the right-wing extremism in Hungary, appeared that very right-wing regime under the leader Viktor Orbán. And I give no comment to this picture, which is not a parody. It is the real picture, and this is here is the source in the slide. This is a very typical case of the right-wing extremism. And the last example for this right-wing extremism, the xenophobia toward the neighbors. I spoke about the openness to the neighbors in the beginning of the last century, referring the case of the Ukrainian culture, and nowadays government-supported Public Opinion Research Institute published a survey that the average Hungarians dislike Ukrainians most of their neighbors. Thus, one can compare this situation with the situation a century ago about I spoke. And everybody knows the commitment of the recent right-wing regime to the authoritarian regime of Russia. And I want still highlight the commitment of the authoritarian regime to Belarus. I have already published some papers about the Belarusian and Hungarian parallels, so I can already illustrate this commitment with a T-shirt because the football, actually Mussolini, the fascist leader of Italy, thus supported the football very much. This was another paper presentation, the role of football in the right-wing regimes. Thus, thanking for your attention, I can conclude my views in a term of the mental genocide. The mental genocide is a term given by a Hungarian scholar, András Inotai. András Inotai worked at the World Bank and at various American institutions and universities. So he is a scholar of economy and financial studies. And András Inotai introduced into discourses, politological discourses, the term of mental genocide. And mental genocide means that the society oppressed and this results in the losing of the openness the society, and that's why the Hungarian society is very open for the extremism, not open for the European open society. So this is my conclusion, and I I don't think that some extremism can be determined by historical traditions, but the openness for extremism can be explained in historical circumstances. That's fact, and that's my point of view. So thanks so much again for your opportunity given to me to present why this remote way.
Thank you.